Welcome to Dynamo Spotlight On, where we interview executives from Dynamo Energy Hub members who are leading the energy transition. Welcome. I'm Kristin Barbato, co-founder and president of Dynamo Energy Hub, and I'm very pleased to be here today for our Dynamo Spotlight on TeraWatt. So with us, of course, today, in order to talk about TeraWatt and have 5 questions answered, is their co-founder and CEO, Neha Palmer. Neha, how are you today?
I'm great. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, of course. Nice to see you from San Francisco. Hopefully things are going well out there.
All good.
Good, good. So we're doing this spotlight series to feature Dynamo members and see what they're up to. So why don't we just hop right into it with our first and easiest question, which I'm sure you get all the time. Can you tell us who is TeraWatt?
TeraWatt is a company that has been purposely built to provide EV charging solutions really targeted at fleets. The needs of fleets are very unique compared to passenger vehicles. So we're here to help fleets as they make that transition from ICE vehicles to EVs.
That's great. We actually just had an event in New York City a couple weeks ago regarding the importance of EVs in urban environments, and that's commonly going to be going to how do fleets react to that and the infrastructure needed for it. So this is a very timely venture that you've begun here. That leads us to our second question, which is, what do you see as your role in the energy transition, and how is TeraWatt unique?
Yeah, I mean, I think as fleets start to electrify, they realize pretty quickly that it's a very complex challenge. The first piece is the vehicles, right? They need to have these vehicles that match the duty cycles of their existing fleets. So they're already contending from a technology perspective with new vehicles, and this is everything for these fleets. Delivering goods on time, delivering them, with good cost structure, really important. So as they start to think about it, they usually start with the vehicles. Um, you know Pretty quickly, though, they realize that charging these vehicles is another aspect of this transition. And they really quickly realize it's incredibly complex as well. They are oftentimes going to pilot vehicles. And so they'll try one or two, what we call behind their fence, on their existing site with their existing operations. And that is usually not too hard. If you're a skiing fan, it's like a a green circle. Pretty easy to do. You can usually find that amount of power already existing on your site. You can install a couple of chargers, try out these trucks. It's really great. But what they really find challenging is when they go to start, converting their fleets. Fleets turn over once every 10 years. And so every year, 10% of their fleet is turning over. If they start to, fold in EVs with that turnover, they realize pretty quickly that they outstrip the amount of charging that they can do on their site. The constraints are either space. A lot of these sites are already busting at the seams.
Yeah.
It's oftentimes power. And that's usually the biggest constraint. They might find that they can fit enough charging capacity for one or two chargers, but when they want to go beyond that, they have to have a really big project with the utility. The third piece that they often have an issue with is that they're in rented space. They might be renting their warehouse from a landlord who might not be interested in investing in the amount of upgrades you need for electricity and things like that, or tearing up their site to put in new conduit. So we are really helping fleets navigate that complexity as they move from the pilot stage to really deploying at scale. How we're unique is that we provide a full stack solution. We don't just sell chargers or software. We are thinking about the entire thing that these companies need. So we have a portfolio of real estate assets all across the US. So we are able to bring sites that are located in locations where fleets tend to be. So think about warehouse hubs, downtown areas, and even along the freeway where they would need to refuel. We are able to bring that large amount of power. We have experts on the team. This is my specific area of expertise, is working with utilities to bring really large amounts of power to a site so that you can power up those chargers. Just to give you a sense of scale, a single vehicle probably needs, 40 kilowatts to charge in a slow fashion. But if you have semi trucks that need to charge quickly because time is money for these fleets, you will quickly need, 10 to 20 times that amount of power for a fleet of semi trucks. So we are working with utilities to bring that power to our sites. We also provide all of the infrastructure, so chargers, on-site generation, solar, et cetera. And then we operate it reliably. And that last piece is really key, a differentiating factor. We're not just providing infrastructure. We know that for these fleets, reliability is super critical. So we are thinking, and I come from the data center world, about high levels of reliability that are required for fleets to feel confident about transitioning. And this full stack solution is pretty unique. I think there's a lot of great hardware providers, a lot of software providers, but we're providing that full stack.
Yeah, so that is an interesting way to approach the market because I think to this point it's been largely piecemeal, having somebody that can go from soup to nuts, and especially the difficulty sometimes of understanding how you're going to integrate with the utility because that is such a different demand for these existing operations.
Exactly.
Lots to consider there. Yeah. So I'll bring us to our third question, which is, what do you see as the macro trends currently affecting TeraWatt? Like, what is driving TeraWatt at this point?
Yeah, we have announced really exciting thing last year. We're building out what we call the I-10 corridor, starting in the port of Long Beach all the way to Texas. And what is driving a lot of it is the activity in California, which is why we're starting in Long Beach. There's something that came out a couple months ago called the Advanced Clean Fleet Rule, which is really forcing fleets to start to move to zero emission vehicles very quickly. 1/1/24, in fact, is kind of the first compliance timeline. So a lot of fleets are rushing to comply with some of these mandates. I think there are also just internal corporate mandates. That's a major trend that we saw with renewable energy. My former employer, Google, was one of the leaders in pushing clean and renewable energy for big energy purchasers, corporate energy purchasers. You're seeing that carry on through everything, including supply chain. And a large portion of many company supply chain emissions have to do with transporting goods. And so you see a lot of those companies making those commitments to be net zero by a certain date. And so they have to start now. It's a journey. It's not something that you can snap your fingers and do overnight. So a lot of these internal commitments are also driving this industry. And then technology. We're starting to see a lot of, wider range of EVs come off the line. Passenger vehicles have been around for a long time, but now you're seeing things like pickup trucks and, of course, these Class 8 semi trucks that many manufacturers have been maybe putting out in a pilot stage for the last couple of years, but are now producing en masse and also improving. They're improving things like charge times, battery capacity, so distance range can be bigger. So those are kind of the three main tailwinds that we see right now.
Yeah, and I'm sure it's going to be interesting to see over the course of several years how the technologies are changing more rapidly and how it adapts to an infrastructure that you're building because even the infrastructure needs to be much more robust and flexible for the changing needs of and of course the growth. So this is a really great area for Terawatt to be tackling because I think a lot of people have these kinds of questions in mind and almost inhibitions. So if they can get these kinds of things addressed ahead of time and as they're moving along with their progression of their adaptation of more and more electric vehicles for fleets, that's a great thing for Terawatt as well. So with that, it sounds like you've got a lot to do. I know you just mentioned the big corridor there, but what are you working on that are big things that are big projects that you're working on now? And what are some of your goals for this year and beyond?
Yeah, the corridor is certainly something that's taking a lot of time. It's 7 sites that we're turning up, and that's going to be a big lift over the next couple of years. I think we're working really closely with customers, right? We're seeing this first range of adopters now say, I need help. I don't have that power. I don't have that space on my site. And so we're starting to work really closely with them and really help them think through their long term roadmap. And some of these are really big companies that have, thousands of vehicles. So thinking about turning that over into a zero emission fleet is a really big task. So working very closely with them on what those roadmaps look like and how we can help them with that roadmap. Where should we be putting our facilities? Right now, as I mentioned, California is a real big focus, but a lot of these companies have operations in many locations, Texas, on the East Coast, and the ports. And so we're working with them to start to plan out what I really think is the backbone of this infrastructure that's going to be required for this major transition. I'll just give one more anecdote. I think we're also helping them think through what it's going to cost.
Yeah.
One thing that's really exciting about what we're providing and unique in the market is that we're not trying to sell them something. We're saying you can take something that you would have to spend a lot of money in CapEx to put on your site or put somewhere else, and we're allowing you to engage as OpEx. And so, again, we think through the roadmaps with these companies. we're able to give them, a cost structure that might be more palatable to do things faster, which is at the end of the day, really all our goal, right? To make this transition happen as smoothly and as quick as possible.
Mhm. And just as you're speaking, it makes me think, are you working or you're going to be working with both corporate fleets? Will you also be working with public fleets, like governmental fleets?
Yeah, we're agnostic. Any kind of fleet that needs a complex charging solution, we're there.
Yeah,
And I think one thing that we also provide is shared infrastructure. It doesn't have to be dedicated to a single fleet, and
yeah,
oftentimes there's better value for a fleet if they're sharing with someone who has a different duty cycle. While they're out doing their run, someone else can charge, right? And
yeah.
so we see some good synergy between different types of duty cycles, and certainly what you see from the private sector and public sector are quite complementary sometimes. So we
Yes,
are
that's actually what made
we're
me think of
agnostic.
it.
We're here
Yes,
to help.
because sometimes you're thinking about what the operational cycles are for one company and what their fleets are doing, and then how can that be complemented by something that is adjacent or has a slightly different type of operational cycle, but then can use the same infrastructure. It really can be a benefit to both and to many. So that's something that I was just curious about. So thank you for addressing that as well. Finally, the last of 5 questions here. Since we've known you for a long time, we're big fans of yours. Wanted to know, what is it that brought you to Dynamo?
Definitely because of the amazing team that I've known for a long time, you and me. But, I think it's the focus on the segment that we're in, right? It's bringing together really our target audience, right? We're going to be working with really big corporations who have giant fleets. And also, the cohort that we have with other startups that are in the same position as us is really invaluable. So it was kind of that ability to tap into kind of both different types of networks that was really exciting for us. And always a pleasure to work with the Dynamo team. Just a real great ecosystem that you've all built there.
Yeah, thanks so much. Yeah, as you're naming off some of the cities that you're in, obviously you're in San Francisco, and so are we, and a big representation happening in Texas. A lot happening in Texas now, as other states are starting to come into view with EV infrastructure. That's exactly where we want to be. So having that network and capability of being able to connect people, as you're connecting them with the infrastructure, we're connecting them with visibility, relationships, and how we can move forward and actually get some of these great deals and projects done. So thank you so much. Any last thoughts before we close out Dynamo Spotlight on TeraWatt?
No, just thanks for having me on. I think it's a really exciting moment in our industry. We've really seen some significant momentum this year with fleets really making big commitments, and we're super excited to help them.
Yeah, that's great. We're also seeing a lot happening in policy and finance to help these solutions get moving as well. So, and your solution as part of that. So the whole total package. Well, thank you so much, Neha. It's been a pleasure speaking with you today, and we look forward to seeing you at some more Dynamo events and hearing more about TeraWatt in the news. Thank care.
Thanks, Kristen.
This has been a Dynamo Spotlight on interview. For more information about Dynamo and to see our latest work, please visit dynamoenergyhub.com. See you next time.